From the moment we agreed to go to that cabin in the mountains, something didn't feel quite right, but no one said anything. It was one of those ideas that seem great when you talk about them over beers. Getting away from everything, breathing fresh air, and disconnecting from our phones for a week. There were 5 of us. Daniel, my best friend Laura, her boyfriend Andres, the siblings Camila and Sergio, and me. We had rented that cabin because it was miles away from civilization. A perfect place, according to the website. Isolated, surrounded by forests, and overlooking a crystal-clear lake. Now I know the website forgot to mention one thing. That cabin hid something. Something that should never have been awakened. The drive to the cabin was already uncomfortable. A winding road that seemed endless, skirting cliffs that made your stomach churn. By the time we arrived, the sun was setting and a thick fog had started to blanket the forest. From the entrance, the cabin looked old, with peeling paint and dusty windows, as if no one had been there in years. Laura made a joke about how creepy it all looked, but no one really laughed. "It's more rustic than I expected," Andre said, trying to sound nonchalant. I pretended it didn't bother me, but something inside me twisted when I saw a crow perched on the fence, staring at us with those dark, empty eyes. That first night was relatively quiet. We settled in, lit the fireplace, and drank wine while talking about our plans for the rest of the week. But just as everyone was beginning to relax, something strange happened. Sergio, who had gone outside to smoke, came back pale as a sheet. He said he had seen someone standing among the trees, watching him. We thought he was joking, trying to scare us. Camila even said, "If you start telling ghost stories, you're sleeping outside." But he didn't smile. He didn't say anything else. He just quickly shut all the windows, making us glance at each other in uneasy silence. That night, I didn't sleep well. I could hear branches snapping outside, as if something large was moving through the forest. Occasionally, the wind would make the windows rattle, and I swear I heard something else. Slow, heavy footsteps, as if someone was walking around the cabin. But when I got up to look out the window, I saw nothing, just darkness and fog. The next morning, we decided to explore the forest, even though something inside me screamed that we shouldn't. Laura convinced us, saying we couldn't come all the way there just to stay cooped up inside. As we walked, the silence of the forest was deafening. There were no birds singing, no sound of leaves rustling in the wind, just the crunch of our boots on the ground. We found a clearing with what looked like an ancient stone altar covered in moss. Andres, being the curious one he always was, inspected it closely and found carvings on the stone. Strange symbols, like some kind of writing none of us recognized. "It must be something from the ancient inhabitants of the area," he said, trying to sound casual, but his voice trembled. That night was when everything started to fall apart. We were preparing dinner when the lights began to flicker. The generator, which we had checked that very morning, started to fail. Then we heard knocking. At first, we thought it was branches hitting the cabin because of the wind, but the knocks were too rhythmic, too precise. Someone or something was outside. Laura went to the window to look, and what she saw made her stumble back, so fast she almost fell over the table. "There's someone out there! There's someone out there!" she screamed, a mix of terror and desperation in her voice. Andres and Sergio grabbed flashlights and, against all common sense, went out to check. The rest of us stayed inside, praying they would come back quickly. But when they returned, their faces were etched with horror. "There was no one there," Sergio said, but his voice lacked conviction. Andres, on the other hand, didn't say a word. His hands trembled, and he didn't let go of the flashlight until he locked himself in one of the rooms. That night was the worst of my life. Around midnight, the knocking returned, but this time it was louder, more aggressive. Then came the whispers, a low, guttural murmur that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Something was moving around the cabin. Laura began to cry, and Camila couldn't stop muttering that this couldn't be happening. I tried to stay calm, but my body was paralyzed. Finally, the knocking stopped, and for a moment, we thought it was over. But then we heard the creaking of wood on the roof. Something had climbed up. The creaking on the roof grew louder, more insistent, as if something heavy was dragging itself across the beams. The sound froze us all in place. We could hear the scrape of claws or nails against the wood, a slow, deliberate scratching that seemed to mock our helplessness. Laura clung to my arm so tightly I thought she'd break the skin. "What is that?" Camila whispered in a shaky voice, though none of us had the courage to answer. We just stared at the ceiling, praying it was all in our imagination. Suddenly, a sharp noise shattered the silence. Something fell into the attic, directly above our heads. The crash was so loud that the lamp shook, casting shadows that danced ominously across the walls. Laura started crying openly, and Sergio muttered, "This can't be happening," as he backed up toward the nearest wall. Then, we saw something even worse. One of the small attic windows was suddenly filled with a grotesque silhouette. At first, we couldn't make sense of what we were looking at. The figure was vaguely human but distorted, its pale, almost translucent skin marked with what looked like rotting wounds. Its mouth opened and closed as though trying to devour the air, revealing yellow, jagged teeth. Its hollow, sunken eyes stared at us without truly seeing, and its hands, or what was left of them, battered frantically at the glass, leaving behind smears of something dark and viscous, something that wasn't quite blood but some repulsive, thick liquid. It couldn't get in the window, it was too small. But that thing wasn't giving up. It shoved its head and a shoulder through the opening, contorting itself in unnatural ways. The sound of its bones cracking as it forced itself further inside is a noise that will haunt me forever. Laura screamed, and Camila could barely contain her panic, muttering over and over, "This isn't real. This can't be real. We have to get it out of there." I shouted, though I had no idea how we were supposed to do that. Trembling but determined, Sergio grabbed a bench from nearby and handed it to me. I approached the attic opening with the bench in hand, as that thing kept shoving more of its body through the window. Its face was now fully inside, slowly turning toward us, and its mouth opened wide, emitting a guttural sound, a growl born of pure hunger. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I raised the bench and slammed it against the creature. It felt like hitting something that was already halfway dead. The bench thudded against its torso, but it kept fighting, its ragged nails clawing for anything to hold on to. "Hit it harder," Andres shouted, rushing to help me. Together, we pushed with all our might. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we managed to shove the zombie back. Its body fell heavily out of the window, landing on the ground outside with a sickening, dull thud. We stood there in silence, gasping for breath, adrenaline coursing through our veins. Laura was still crying, and Camila could barely move. Sergio stood frozen, staring at the attic window, as if expecting the thing to return at any moment. What the hell was that? We all wondered. None of us had an answer. The only thing we knew for sure was that we weren't safe neither inside nor outside that cursed cabin. The rest of the night was pure hell. After shoving the zombie out of the attic, we tried convincing ourselves it was over, but deep down, we knew we were lying. The silence didn't last long. Soon, the banging returned, this time from multiple directions. The front door, the windows, even the back wall. It felt like dozens of those things were surrounding us, each one trying to break in, scratching and pounding with inhuman strength. Every creak of the wood made me shudder. We barricaded ourselves in the center of the cabin, all huddled together, clutching anything that could serve as a weapon. Kitchen knives, the fireplace poker, even an oil lamp. Laura wouldn't stop crying, and Camila was whispering prayers so faint they were barely audible over the chaos. Andres tried to remain calm, but his hands trembled so badly he could barely hold the poker. I could only think of one thing. We are not going to survive the night. The growls and moans from those things were terrifying, guttural, full of hunger. Worst of all was their persistence, as if they knew we'd eventually falter, that the cabin wouldn't hold forever. At one point, I saw one of them peer through a window. As soon as the faint light from the lamp touched its face, it retreated, almost as if the light hurt it. That was our only advantage. The darkness was their ally, but the faint light, we had kept them at bay for now. The night dragged on endlessly. No one slept, not even for a second. Every time the noises seemed to stop, they came back stronger, more desperate. Finally, as the first rays of dawn began filtering through the windows, everything went silent. The growls stopped, and the banging ceased. We sat there in silence, waiting for them to return, but they didn't. Andres cautiously approached a window and peered outside, barely breathing. "They're not there," he finally said. "They're gone." But I knew they weren't gone. They were only hiding. Laura was the first to voice what we were all thinking. "We can't stay here. We have to leave. Now." No one argued. We were so terrified that anywhere felt safer than that cabin. We decided to pack only the essentials and get out as quickly as possible. Our car was stored in the barn next to the cabin, a place we had completely ignored until that moment. When we opened the front door, the fresh morning air hit us, but it didn't make us feel safe. Everything was too quiet, even for a forest. We moved quickly toward the barn, not daring to look around too much, as if lingering too long would awaken something. When we reached the barn, Andres was the first to push the door open. Inside, it was dark, with only faint rays of sunlight streaming through the cracks in the wooden walls, barely illuminating the space. And then we saw them, or rather, we saw it. They were there, lurking in the shadows, crouched between the car and the darkest corners of the barn. For maybe 5 of those things. Their hollow eyes reflected the faint light, and their bodies remained motionless, as if they were waiting. But the moment Andres took a step toward the car, everything changed. One of them moved, growling like a beast roused from a deep slumber. Its movements were clumsy but deliberate. Camila let out a scream and stumbled back, nearly tripping into me. "We can't go in there," I said, though it didn't need to be said. It was obvious. Every time we got closer, those monsters reacted, slowly rising and taking a few steps toward us before stopping again, as if they knew daylight weakened them but were still willing to try. Andres picked up a stick he had found nearby and waved it in front of one of them, but the creature didn't even flinch. It simply opened its mouth, revealing those rotting, jagged teeth, a grim reminder of what awaited us if we made a mistake. "They're waiting," Sergio said in a low voice, barely audible. "They're waiting for the night. That sealed our decision. We couldn't stay there, but we also couldn't get to the car. We were trapped, with no way out of the mountains, surrounded by something we didn't understand. And the worst part was the certainty that when the sun disappeared behind the mountains, those things would come for us again." We couldn't stay out there much longer, but we couldn't keep ignoring the situation either. The zombies were there, hiding in the shadows of the barn, and our only means of escaping this nightmare was trapped with them. We all knew we had to do something, but every passing second added to our sense of helplessness. Finally, Andres proposed a plan: distract them. If we could lure them away from the car, someone could get inside, start it, and drive out. For that, Andres grabbed the can of gasoline we'd found behind the cabin and explained his plan. We would use fire to get their attention. The idea was to pour some gasoline on a pile of branches and light it. While the noise and flames drew the zombies away, someone would run to the car. "It's dangerous," he said, "but it's our only option." The tension was unbearable as we prepared. I held a flashlight and a knife. Andres carried the gas can, and Sergio had a thick branch he was using as an improvised weapon. Camila and Laura stayed behind, ready to make a dash for the car. Every step toward the barn felt like walking toward a death sentence. Andres was the first to move into the clearing a few meters away from the barn. He quickly poured some gasoline over a pile of branches and dry leaves he'd gathered, pulled out a lighter and lit it. The fire flared up almost instantly, crackling loudly. The orange glow illuminated the inside of the barn, revealing the motionless figures of the zombies. At first, they didn't move, but then one of them turned its head toward the fire, as if the sound and light had caught its attention. It was working. One of them staggered out of the barn, and soon others followed. The fire and noise seemed to confuse them, as though they were both drawn to it and wary of it. At a certain moment, Andres, Camila, and Laura sprinted toward the car. Everything seemed to be going as planned. They reached the vehicle's door when everything went horribly wrong. One of the zombies, faster than the others, suddenly changed direction and lunged at Camila. It happened so quickly that she didn't even have time to react. In a matter of seconds, the creature grabbed her arm and bit into her shoulder with brutal force. Her scream pierced the night, a sound I'll never be able to erase from my memory. Laura tried to help her, hitting the zombie with everything she had, but it was useless. By the time Sergio and I got there, it was already too late. Camila was on the ground, and the bite on her shoulder made it clear what was coming. We had to move, Andres shouted, but none of us wanted to leave her. Camila looked at us with tears in her eyes, fully understanding what was about to happen. "Go," she whispered, her voice breaking with pain. But we couldn't. We were paralyzed, caught between terror and guilt. It wasn't until Camila started convulsing that we snapped out of it. The transformation was quick and grotesque. The bite darkened rapidly, as if something evil was spreading beneath her skin. Her eyes, once full of life, turned dull and empty, and her breathing stopped. For a few seconds, there was a terrifying silence. And then Camila got up. The same girl who had laughed with us just days ago was now one of those things. Her movements were jerky, but her hunger was unmistakable. We were no longer her friends. We were prey. Laura couldn't stop crying, and Sergio stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. I yelled at them to run, and finally, everyone reacted. We ran back to the cabin, leaving Camila behind. We slammed the door shut and barricaded it with everything we could find. The growls and pounding started almost immediately. It wasn't just the zombies from the barn now. Camila was among them. I could hear her guttural, inhuman voice blending with the sounds of those creatures. Inside the cabin, we collapsed. No one could speak. Laura was in shock, trembling and murmuring Camila's name over and over. Andres punched a wall, cursing loudly. Sergio sat in a corner, staring at the floor with vacant eyes. Finally, Andres took a deep breath and broke the silence. "We need another plan," he said. "We can't stay here. If we don't move, they'll kill us when night falls." No one wanted to respond, but we knew he was right. The question now was, what would we do next? Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was unbearable. The constant pounding of zombie hands against the walls, the muffled growls, and the despair on our faces made everything worse. Laura couldn't stop crying. Camila had the car keys. She suddenly said in a whisper that broke the silence. We all turned to look at her at the same time, instantly realizing what that meant. Our only way out of this nightmare was in the pockets of someone who was no longer a person. Sergio jumped to his feet, his face twisted with anger. "No, we can't do it. She's my sister. We can't treat her like she's one of those things." But Andres wasn't willing to listen. "Camila is gone, Sergio," he said firmly. "You know it as well as we do. And if we don't get those keys, none of us are getting out of here alive." The argument quickly became heated. Sergio refused to accept the idea of confronting what was left of Camila, while Laura was too terrified to even imagine it. But Andres and I both knew we had no other choice. The zombies wouldn't stop. It was only a matter of time before the cabin gave way, and when that happened, we'd be trapped. "Listen," I said, trying to calm everyone down. We'll make it quick. One of us will distract her, while someone else searches her pockets for the keys. We can't stay here much longer. No one looked convinced, but we didn't have any alternatives. Finally, Sergio nodded, though his eyes were filled with tears. "I'll distract her," he said quietly. The plan was risky and desperate. We knew we'd have to wait until midday, when the sun was at its peak. For some reason, those creatures seemed slower and more uncomfortable in bright light. Even so, we had no idea how much time we'd have to keep them away while we tried to retrieve the keys. When the time came, we stepped out of the cabin with extreme caution. The barn was still dark, but sunlight filtered through the cracks in its wooden walls, casting bright lines across the interior. We could see Camila there, staggering near one of the corners. Her movements were erratic, almost as if she were trapped between two worlds, the living and the dead. The other zombies were there too, but they seemed slower, their bodies barely moving as they stayed in the shadows. Sergio stepped forward, his hands trembling. He was holding a branch, but it was clear he had no intention of using it. "Camila," he whispered, even though he knew there would be no response. As he moved closer, the other zombies began to stir, but Andres and I positioned ourselves at the barn entrance, banging on the walls with whatever we could find to draw their attention. The noise worked, and two of them slowly began moving toward us. Meanwhile, Sergio reached Camila. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice broken in the heavy air of the barn. She turned her head toward him, her vacant eyes locking onto his face, and suddenly let out a low growl. Stretching her arms toward him, Sergio stepped back, but not too far. It was as if he couldn't fully accept what was happening. From where I stood, I saw my chance. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint, but I ran toward them anyway. I reached Camila from behind and, with trembling hands, began searching her pockets. My stomach churned at the feel of her cold, damp clothes, but I didn't stop. Finally, my fingers brushed against something metallic. The keys. I pulled them out quickly, but at that moment, Camila spun around toward me. Sergio reacted before I could do anything. With a cry that was more pain than rage, he shoved Camila against one of the barn walls, holding her back from me. I didn't hesitate. I bolted toward the barn entrance while Andres worked to keep the other zombies at bay. When I reached the door, I turned back and saw Camila struggling against Sergio, her teeth snapping dangerously close to his face. "Get out of there, Sergio," Andres shouted, but he didn't move. I can't leave her like this," Sergio cried. We couldn't do anything more. Andres grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the barn as the sounds of growls and Sergio's shouts filled the air. Sergio had made his decision. Back at the cabin, Laura could barely speak. She was in total shock, whispering Camila's name over and over again. Andres and I couldn't even look at each other. The keys were in my hand, but the price we'd paid for them was far too high. We had the car now, but we were losing our people, and we didn't know if it would all be worth it in the end. I finally looked down at the keys in my hand and then toward the door. Nightfall wasn't far off, and we knew we had to act fast. "Now," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. "We try to get out of here." I had no idea how we were going to make it, but we had no other choice. That night was the longest of all. We knew it would be our last chance, and if we failed, there would be no dawn for us. The strategy was simple in theory, but terrifying in execution. Andres would stay behind in the cabin, making noise to distract the zombies, while the rest of us escaped through the back door. He had a flashlight and the fireplace poker as weapons, but even with those, the idea of leaving him behind was unbearable. He smiled at us and said he'd be fine, though his face betrayed him. Laura was too terrified to speak, and Sergio, after losing his sister, was entirely shut down. I just nodded because I knew that if I opened my mouth, I'd lose what little courage I had left. The plan started shortly after the sun disappeared behind the mountains. The growls and pounding on the walls began almost immediately, as if the zombies knew night was their time. Andres turned on the flashlight and began running back and forth inside the cabin, banging on the walls and shouting, "I'm here! Come get me, you bastards!" The growls grew louder, and the sound of zombie hands scraping against the walls became more intense. It was terrifying, but it was working. While Andres kept them busy, Laura, Sergio, and I slipped out the back door. We moved in complete silence, creeping through the shadows while the growls focused on the front of the cabin. The barn was about 30 meters away, but every step felt like a kilometer. Finally, we reached it, and that's when the most dangerous part began. We poured gasoline around the barn, creating a circle that completely surrounded it. The plan was simple. We'd light the fire to disorient the zombies and use the chaos to get to the car. Laura struck a match with trembling hands and tossed it onto the ground. Within seconds, the flames started growing, illuminating the night with a brilliant orange glow. The growls intensified almost immediately. The zombies, drawn to the fire and movement, began shambling toward the barn. Their gait was clumsy and erratic, but there was something horrifying about the way they ignored everything else as they moved toward the flames. We hurried toward the car as the fire crackled around us, the shadows of the zombies dancing on the barn's walls. "The keys!" I suddenly yelled, remembering they were still in my pocket. I fumbled to pull them out, unlocked the car, and threw open the door. Sergio and Laura climbed in right away. But just as I was about to follow, one of the zombies emerged from the shadows and lunged at me. Its weight knocked me to the ground, and its mouth opened wide, revealing rotted teeth as it tried to bite me. I screamed as loud as I could, and Sergio reacted instantly. He jumped out of the car and struck the zombie with a branch he'd picked up from the ground. "Get up, now!" he shouted, and with his help, I managed to get back on my feet and climb into the car. Zombie hands pounded against the windows as I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and for a moment, I thought we'd made it. But there was still one thing left to do. We had to go back for Andres. Every part of me wanted to keep driving and get as far away from that nightmare as possible, but I knew they were right. Turning the car around, we headed back toward the cabin, weaving through the zombies, stumbling toward the flames. When we reached the front of the house, Andres burst out the door, swinging the poker at one of the zombies as the others reached for him. We threw the car door open, and Andres dove in just as a zombie nearly grabbed his leg. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, speeding away from the burning barn and the zombies that staggered after us. We drove without stopping, following the winding road that had brought us to that cursed cabin. No one spoke for hours. We were all too shaken, trying to process what we'd lived through and what we'd lost. By the time we finally reached civilization, the sun was beginning to rise. The lights of a gas station appeared in the distance, and I'd never felt such relief in my life. We pulled into the parking lot, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we let out deep breaths. We were safe, but as I looked at my friends, I could see something had changed. None of us would ever be the same. That night, we hadn't just lost Camila and Sergio. We'd lost a part of ourselves. As the sky brightened with the dawn, only one question lingered in my mind. Was this truly the end, or would what we'd left behind continue to haunt us?
Have you ever wondered what would happen if a zombie outbreak turned into a high-stakes heist? Army of the Dead dives right into that terrifying question. Directed by Zack Snyder, this 2021 movie isn't your typical zombie apocalypse film. It's a chaotic blend of horror and heist action, set against the eerie and desolate backdrop of Las Vegas, now overrun by the undead. Snyder takes us into a world where the stakes are high, the undead are smarter than usual, and survival depends on sheer wit and grit. As our group of mercenaries pushes through this nightmare in hopes of a multi-million-dollar payday, they face terrifying foes, unexpected alliances, and sinister secrets that could cost them far more than their lives. This isn't just about survival. It's about facing down the ultimate horror and uncovering a twisted sense of humanity amidst the carnage. Snyder's vision for Army of the Dead came from a fascination with both horror and survival action, blending classic zombie lore with a fresh take on what it means to confront an apocalyptic scenario. Snyder first explored zombies in his 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead, a film that reinvigorated the zombie genre with modern pacing and relentless suspense. Building on that foundation, he crafted Army of the Dead to challenge the norms, adding layers of emotional complexity, tactical warfare, and even social commentary. The film's inception was a long journey, with Snyder reportedly pitching the concept back in 2007. It took over a decade for his vision to reach the screen, arriving in a cinematic landscape where audiences are constantly looking for something that pushes boundaries in both story and spectacle. At its core, Army of the Dead explores themes of survival, sacrifice, and greed amidst the chaotic breakdown of society. As the mercenary team enters Las Vegas to retrieve millions in abandoned cash, they're forced to confront both the zombie threat and their own inner demons. The relentless pursuit of wealth versus the value of human life plays out as a central conflict, raising questions about what people are truly willing to risk in the face of total collapse. In a world where resources are scarce, trust is shattered, and danger lurks in every corner, Snyder's film reflects on our primal instincts for survival and how they can be both a source of strength and our ultimate undoing. Beneath the blood-soaked action, there's a critical look at humanity's moral failings, painted vividly through the desperation and motivations of each character. The characters themselves bring a vivid sense of life, conflict, and vulnerability to this horror-driven heist. Scott Ward, played by Dave Bautista, is a haunted, reluctant hero carrying the weight of past mistakes. A former soldier now turned cook, Ward is given a chance to redeem himself and secure a future for his estranged daughter, Kate. His emotional journey adds depth to the plot, contrasting sharply with the violent and chaotic setting of zombie-ridden Las Vegas. Alongside him are a diverse team of specialists: Maria, the skilled fighter with a hidden history; Vandero, the philosopher warrior whose musings on life and death add a surprising layer to his character; and Dieter, the safecracker whose comedic innocence contrasts with the life-or-death stakes around him. And then there's Zeus, the zombie king, intelligent, brutal, and driven by a primal code that makes him as much a character as any of the humans. Each character, whether human or undead, has a personal motivation, transforming the plot from simple survival horror into a layered story of ambition, redemption, and revenge. In terms of unforgettable scenes, Snyder doesn't hold back. One of the most striking sequences is the crew's initial entry into Las Vegas. They pass towering monuments and casinos now decayed and filled with haunting echoes, the silent remains of a world gone mad. The sense of dread heightens with every step, and soon, they encounter the hibernating horde, zombies lying in eerie stillness. The tension in this moment is almost unbearable, as each crew member must silently navigate through rows of undead, any sound risking total carnage. Another standout scene is when Zeus, the zombie king, showcases his intelligence and brutal authority. His chilling relationship with his queen adds a twisted touch of humanity to the undead, reminding viewers that this isn't a mindless horde, but a colony with its own hierarchy, rules, and vengeance. Snyder elevates the traditional zombie trope by crafting scenes that stay seared in the viewer's mind, blending horror with unexpected depth and complexity. Of course, no movie is without its critiques. Army of the Dead received mixed responses for its storyline and pacing. Some viewers felt that the balance between the heist and horror elements could have been tighter, with moments that sometimes stalled the momentum of the action. Others criticized certain plot decisions that seemed convenient or out of place, particularly when it came to characters making questionable choices in life-or-death scenarios. Still, for every criticism, there was an equal measure of praise for the film's boldness in pushing the genre's boundaries and attempting to weave an emotional story amidst the chaos. It's a divisive movie in many ways, but one that undeniably leaves a lasting impression, whether through the tense action or the moral questions it raises. When we compare Army of the Dead to other works in the zombie genre, it stands out for its ambitious fusion of horror with a heist framework. Unlike classic zombie films like Night of the Living Dead, which focus on survival in confined spaces, Snyder's film expands into tactical warfare with a mission-based plot. Comparisons can also be drawn with World War Z, which introduces fast-moving zombies and global-scale infection, but Snyder's film is unique in its portrayal of the undead as organized, even intelligent. This approach sets it apart, marking it as a fresh take in a genre known for survivalist tropes and claustrophobic tension, allowing it to carve out a distinct space among modern horror action movies. Snyder's directorial style plays a massive role in defining the atmosphere of Army of the Dead. His signature use of slow-motion shots amplifies key scenes, bringing a hyper-realistic feel to the action and heightening the dread and suspense. His focus on striking, almost surreal visuals makes the desolation of Las Vegas eerie and beautiful, adding a haunting beauty to the carnage. Snyder's use of color and contrast, flashes of neon against grays and browns of destruction, creates a surrealistic effect that feels uniquely cinematic. The dark tones combined with bursts of color bring an otherworldly aura to this zombie-filled Las Vegas, making it feel as alien as it is familiar. Army of the Dead ultimately leaves audiences with more than just scares. It's a reflection on the human capacity for greed and the sacrifices we're willing to make for those we love. Scott Ward's journey represents a deeper, almost tragic meditation on redemption and loss, while the horrific world around him suggests a society that has already lost its humanity long before the undead rose. This layered storytelling invites viewers to question what they would do in the same position. Would we be willing to risk it all for fortune? Or would we fight for family and the faint hope of a better future? These questions resonate, making Army of the Dead not just a spectacle, but a thought-provoking entry into the genre. Thank you for joining this exploration of Army of the Dead. This film brings horror, action, and raw human emotion together in a way that redefines what a zombie movie can be. If you're intrigued by this mix of heist and horror, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the most thrilling and terrifying stories out there. Hit the notification bell to never miss a video, and let us know in the comments. Would you risk everything in a zombie apocalypse for a shot at millions? Stay tuned, because the undead are always lurking, and we'll be here to uncover every chilling detail. The sky was a tapestry of ash and crimson, the remnants of a world burned and broken. Cities that once teemed with life were now skeletal ruins, overrun by vines and the whisper of the wind. A lone figure, clad in patched armor and a tattered cloak, trudged through the desolate landscape, the weight of 28 years of survival etched into their every step. Evelyn's face, scarred and hardened, bore a look of determination as she clutched a scavenged rifle, its barrel worn smooth from use. Behind her, a distant growl broke the silence, a haunting reminder that she was never truly alone. Evelyn paused for a moment, her ears straining to catch any sound beyond the ominous growl. The stillness of the air pressed against her like a vice, the silence broken only by the soft rustle of leaves. She crouched low, her fingers brushing against the cracked concrete. The ground was littered with shards of glass and faded remnants of a forgotten era. A child's toy car, now rusted and covered in moss. Her heart thudded against her ribs as the growl grew closer, accompanied by the unmistakable scrape of claws against stone. Evelyn's breath hitched as she caught sight of the creature stalking her. A grotesque amalgamation of sinew and shadow, its elongated limbs moving with a horrifying grace. Its eyes, two orbs of pale blue light, glowed unnaturally in the dimness. Slowly, she unslung her rifle, the faint metallic sound ringing louder than she intended. The creature's head snapped toward her, its maw parting to reveal jagged, yellowed fangs. Time slowed as they locked eyes, predator and prey suspended in a moment of fatal recognition. She knew running was futile. Evelyn pulled the trigger, the rifle's deafening crack shattering the oppressive silence. The bullet struck true, embedding itself into the creature's shoulder. It let out a bone-chilling screech, a sound that echoed through the ruins and sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine. The beast staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it charged with alarming speed, its twisted body contorting as it closed the distance. Evelyn bolted, her boots pounding against the cracked pavement. She ducked into an abandoned subway tunnel, the darkness swallowing her whole as she prayed the creature wouldn't follow. The tunnel was a labyrinth of shadows, the air damp and heavy with the stench of decay. Evelyn's steps echoed unervingly, each sound bouncing back to her like a taunt. She knew these tunnels had once been a lifeline for the city above, but now they felt like a tomb. Her flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light over the graffiti-streaked walls and skeletal remains of old train cars. Behind her, the creature's screeches grew distant, but she didn't dare slow down. Her heart pounded like a war drum as she pressed deeper into the darkness, searching for a place to hide or fight. As Evelyn rounded a corner, her flashlight illuminated a makeshift barricade constructed of rusted metal and scraps of wood. A faint glow emanated from behind it, a sign of life, perhaps even safety. She approached cautiously, her finger hovering over the trigger of her rifle. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice hoarse and trembling. The glow flickered, and a voice answered, ragged but distinctly human. "Lower your weapon if you want to talk." Evelyn hesitated, weighing the risk, then slowly lowered her rifle. From the shadows emerged a man, his face gaunt and eyes hollow, clutching a crude spear. "You're lucky you're not one of them," he muttered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "But they're never far behind." Evelyn exchanged wary glances with the man before stepping closer, her eyes scanning the barricade for any signs of traps or hidden threats. "How long have you been down here?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease prickling at her skin. The man shrugged, his shoulders sagging under the weight of years spent surviving. "Long enough to know what's safe and what's not. You shouldn't have come this deep without knowing the rules." He gestured toward the dim glow behind the barricade, revealing a small group huddled together, 3 other survivors, their faces pale and haunted. "We're all that's left down here. If you've brought that thing with you," his voice trailed off, and his eyes flicked toward the darkness, "then we're as good as dead." Evelyn felt the weight of their despair pressing against her. She stepped toward the group, their hollow eyes following her every move. "I didn't bring it here," she said firmly, though uncertainty gnawed at her. "It was already hunting when I found the tunnels." The man tightened his grip on the spear and exchanged nervous glances with the others. A young girl in the group, no older than 10, clutched a tattered doll and whispered, "They always find us." Her words sent a chill through the air, a dreadful prophecy that none dared to dispute. Evelyn scanned the dim surroundings, formulating a plan. "We can fight it together," she said, her voice steady despite the mounting tension. "But first, we need to set traps." The group hesitated but ultimately nodded, a silent pact forming in the cold, damp air of the tunnel. Evelyn began directing them, her voice low but commanding. We need noise to lure it and barriers to slow it down. Anything sharp, anything heavy. We'll make it work. The man with the spear introduced himself as Marcus and quickly proved adept at constructing crude traps. Old metal pipes, shattered glass, and rusted tools were repurposed into a deadly arsenal. The girl, Lily, remained by her mother's side, watching the preparations with wide, unblinking eyes. Evelyn worked tirelessly, her hands trembling only slightly as she armed a series of makeshift explosives salvaged from old batteries and chemicals. If this doesn't stop it, she muttered, nothing will. The distant echoes of the creature's growls returned, louder and more menacing than before. The group froze, their makeshift weapons gripped tightly as they listened. It's coming, Lily's mother whispered, pulling her daughter close. Evelyn nodded sharply, motioning for everyone to take their positions. The tunnel seemed to shrink as the air thickened with fear. Evelyn crouched behind a barricade, her rifle aimed at the darkness beyond. The traps were set, but doubt gnawed at her. Would it be enough? The sound of claws scraping against the concrete grew deafening. And then, out of the shadows, the creature emerged. Its pale blue eyes glowed brighter in the oppressive dark, and its grotesque body seemed to ripple with malice. Evelyn held her breath, her finger steady on the trigger, waiting for the perfect moment to spring the trap. The creature lunged forward, its guttural roar reverberating through the tunnel. Evelyn shouted, now! Marcus triggered the first trap, a series of sharpened pipes released from above. They struck the beast, impaling its grotesque flesh, but it barely faltered. Blood, thick and black, oozed from its wounds, yet it only seemed more enraged. Evelyn fired her rifle, each shot precise and deafening. The bullets struck the creature's glowing eyes, shattering one in a burst of pale light. It let out an ear-splitting shriek, staggering back. Behind her, Marcus and the others hurled makeshift projectiles. Bricks, jagged metal, and even flaming debris. The tunnel became a battlefield of chaos and desperation. Suddenly, the explosives Evelyn had planted detonated with a violent roar, the shockwave throwing everyone to the ground. The beast was engulfed in fire and smoke, its screams fading into the deafening explosion. Evelyn's ears rang as she struggled to her feet, her vision blurred. The tunnel was now a haze of dust and firelight. Had they finally stopped it? Evelyn pushed herself upright, coughing against the thick, acrid smoke that filled the air. The tunnel was eerily silent now, the roar of the explosion replaced by the crackling of small fires. She scanned the debris-strewn ground for any sign of the creature, her rifle clutched tightly in trembling hands. A low, gurgling sound broke the quiet, and her heart sank. From the rubble, the creature began to stir. Its movements were sluggish, its once menacing glow now dim and erratic, but it was still alive. Evelyn's jaw clenched. She had no bullets left, and the others were too weak to continue the fight. She turned to Marcus, who was leaning against a broken beam, blood trickling down his temple. We have to end this, she said through gritted teeth. Marcus nodded weakly, handing her a rusted pipe with a jagged edge. Do it fast, he murmured. Evelyn stepped forward, every muscle in her body screaming with exhaustion, and prepared to face the creature one last time. Evelyn approached the creature cautiously, every step a battle against fear and exhaustion. Its grotesque form twitched weakly, a mockery of the terror it had inspired moments before. She raised the jagged pipe above her head, her mind racing through memories of the countless battles that had brought her to this moment. The creature's dim eyes flickered, its mouth opening in a garbled snarl as if it refused to die without a fight. Evelyn let out a primal scream and drove the pipe downward with all her remaining strength. The jagged metal pierced its skull, silencing it in an instant. She stood over its lifeless body, her chest heaving with exhaustion and relief. Around her, the other survivors began to stir, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. For the first time in years, the oppressive weight of constant fear began to lift. Evelyn dropped the pipe and collapsed to her knees, staring at the still form of the monster. "It's over," she whispered, though a part of her new survival was only the beginning of their struggles. In the distance, faint light flickered, perhaps a way out of the tunnels, or perhaps a new challenge. Evelyn rose unsteadily, helping Marcus to his feet. "Come on," she said, glancing back at the others. "We're not done yet." Together, they began to move toward the unknown, leaving behind the smoldering remnants of the battle.
Dante Alighieri described the Ninth Circle of Hell as the deepest and most terrifying of all. It is reserved for traitors and is divided into 4 zones, each punishing different types of treachery. Kaina, for those who betray their own family, named after Cain, who murdered his brother Abel. Antenora, for those who betray their homeland or political party, named after Antenor, a Trojan who, according to some medieval legends, betrayed Troy. Ptolomia, for those who betray their guests, named after Ptolemy, who murdered his guests at a banquet. Judeca, for those who betray their benefactors and superiors. Here lies Lucifer himself, who betrayed God, along with Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius, who betrayed Julius Caesar. The punishment in this circle is unique. Souls are trapped in a frozen lake called Cocytus, locked in different positions depending on the severity of their betrayal. At the center of hell, Lucifer is imprisoned in the ice, eternally gnawing on Judas, Brutus, and Cassius with his 3 mouths. This circle is the most chilling because the punishment is not fire or extreme physical torture, but absolute immobility in eternal cold, symbolizing the frozen heart of betrayal. Additionally, some condemned souls are so completely trapped in the ice that they have already been forgotten, emphasizing despair and total oblivion as a fate worse than death. The cold is the first thing I feel. A brutal cold that is not just a sensation on my skin, but penetrates deep into my bones, into my very soul. I breathe, but the air is razor sharp, like invisible blades tearing through my throat with every inhalation. I am here, in the last circle of hell, where treachery is repaid with the most cruel condemnation imaginable. There are no flames, no screams of agony like in the other levels of Dante's hell. Here, an eerie silence reigns, broken only by the crackling of ice and the distant murmur of muffled laments. I walk, or at least I try. The ground is treacherous, a thick layer of transparent ice revealing condemned souls trapped beneath me, frozen faces twisted in horror and despair, unblinking eyes, mouths frozen in an eternal scream that will never be heard. I try to look away, but the landscape does not improve. Further ahead, half-submerged bodies emerge in the ice, their torsos frozen, their arms outstretched as if still try to grasp something, a final hope that will never come. The cold gnaws at my skin. Every step is harder than the last. I feel my limbs stiffening, my thoughts slowing. In the distance, enormous ice pillars rise from the ground, like massive fangs emerging from nowhere. I approach one and realize it is not just ice. Inside, a human figure is completely encapsulated, a traitor whose punishment is eternal immobility, without even the possibility of a final scream. His face is tilted, his mouth slightly open, as if in the moment of being trapped, he was still trying to beg for his life. But here, there is no mercy. I keep moving forward until I reach an abyss where the ice seems to crack and descend into infinite layers. And at the center of it all, the most horrifying creature my eyes have ever seen, Lucifer. His gigantic body is trapped in the ice up to his waist, his 3 faces twisted in an expression of pure hatred. Each of his mouths endlessly chews on a supreme traitor. Judas Iscariot, Brutus, and Cassius, the ultimate betrayers. His teeth sink into their flesh, tearing apart, but never allowing them to die. Judas' skin is stained with blood and saliva, his face contorted in indescribable suffering. There are no screams, only the wet sound of muscles being shredded. The air here is even colder, if that's possible. Suddenly, I realize the irony. The fallen angel who defied God is not engulfed in flames, does not reign over a burning hell. He is here, in this frozen tomb, in absolute despair. His enormous, membranous wings flap slowly, creating the glacial wind that keeps this entire circle frozen. Lucifer is his own jailer, condemned to repeat the same act for eternity. My fingers no longer respond. My breathing slows, my heart beats sluggishly. And then I understand, betrayal is not punished with fire because fire consumes, destroys, purifies. Betrayal is punished with ice because ice preserves, immobilizes, forces you to live eternally with the weight of your sins. No one screams here because hope is long gone. No one moves because the ice forbids it. And slowly, as the cold embraces me with its lethal caress, I realize that I, too, am condemned. There is no escape from the ninth circle, no redemption, only frozen oblivion.
Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the dark, endless waters of the Bermuda Triangle? This mysterious region in the North Atlantic Ocean has swallowed ships, planes, and people, leaving only questions in its wake. Known as one of the most dangerous places on Earth, the Bermuda Triangle has haunted our imaginations for centuries. Despite numerous scientific explanations, tales of sudden disappearances and ghostly sightings continue to chill the bones of sailors and pilots alike. But why? What could be lurking in these waters, powerful enough to trap and erase its victims without a trace? Tonight, we'll uncover the terrifying secrets of the Bermuda Triangle, a place that has blurred the lines between science and the supernatural for decades. The legend of the Bermuda Triangle dates back to Christopher Columbus's journey in 1492, when he reported seeing strange lights hovering over the water and experiencing sudden compass malfunctions near the area. Yet, the modern mystery of the Bermuda Triangle didn't take hold until the 20th century, when entire planes and vessels started vanishing without explanation. One of the most famous cases is that of Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers that disappeared in 1945 without leaving a single trace. Despite extensive searches, the planes and the 14 men aboard them were never found. Over time, this area came to be known as the Devil's Triangle, inspiring books, documentaries, and countless theories. Scientists, skeptics, and supernatural enthusiasts have all tried to explain these eerie events, but the Bermuda Triangle remains a place of unsolved mysteries, a riddle that no one can fully decode. The Bermuda Triangle evokes some of humanity's most primal fears: the fear of the unknown, the power of nature, and the vulnerability of human life. The vast ocean, with its infinite depths, becomes a symbol of our own helplessness against forces beyond our understanding. Theories range from massive methane gas bubbles causing ships to sink suddenly, to violent waterspouts, magnetic anomalies, or even interdimensional portals that pull victims into another realm. For some, it's the haunt of ancient curses or extraterrestrial activity. The area itself seems to defy the laws of physics, as magnetic compasses often malfunction and GPS systems go haywire. Each theory, whether scientific or supernatural, only deepens the horror of a region where nothing, not even the most sophisticated technology, offers any promise of safety or understanding. Let's meet some of the souls caught in the Bermuda Triangle's terrifying embrace. There's Flight 19, as I mentioned, whose pilots reported disorientation, despite being experienced navigators. The last radio transmission of Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the lead pilot, was chilling. "We can't tell where we are. Everything is wrong. Strange. We can't be sure of any direction." In 1918, the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship with over 300 men on board, disappeared without a trace in calm waters. No SOS signal, no wreckage was ever found. And then, There are countless personal accounts from those who survived brief encounters, sailors who report seeing ghostly lights, feeling intense dread, or even temporarily losing time. These stories make the Bermuda Triangle more than a geographical location. They turn it into a character, a malevolent force that traps its victims in fear and mystery. One of the most chilling scenes comes from a survivor, a man named Bruce Jernon, who flew through what he described as an electronic fog. As he approached the triangle, his plane entered a tunnel of clouds, and for a full minute, he felt completely disoriented, his instruments going berserk. When he emerged, he was shocked to realize that he had traveled over 100 miles in less than 3 minutes, an impossible feat even for the fastest aircraft. Jernon's story is not the only one. Many report strange mists, sudden time lapses, and an overwhelming sense that the triangle is watching, waiting. These encounters haunt the memories of survivors, and these strange phenomena, recorded even by modern pilots, only add to the Bermuda Triangle's terrifying allure. Understand the scientific theories and eerie unknowns surrounding it. Researchers have proposed that large deposits of methane hydrate under the ocean floor could explain some of the strange occurrences. When these gases are suddenly released, they can bubble up and lower the water's density, causing ships to sink instantly without a trace. It's a chilling thought. A vessel could simply vanish in a matter of seconds, with no warning and no chance of survival for its crew. Others argue that the triangle's unique geographic position creates unusual magnetic anomalies that interfere with navigation systems. Compasses spin wildly, planes lose course, and electronic systems fail. Though these theories seem rational, they feel hauntingly inadequate when confronted with the sheer scale and frequency of disappearances, leaving open the question: is there something even darker at play? But what if the Bermuda Triangle isn't just a physical location, but a doorway? Some paranormal researchers speculate that the triangle might be an interdimensional portal, a place where the fabric of reality is thinner, allowing people and objects to slip into other dimensions. This concept, often referred to as the vortex theory, suggests that travelers may unknowingly step through a rift in space and time, leading to parallel worlds or even into realms we cannot comprehend. This theory becomes even more disturbing when you consider the many accounts from survivors who describe feeling out of place or disoriented. The eerie fogs, sudden losses of time, and strange lights add to the idea that the Bermuda Triangle might be a boundary between our world and others. Imagine stepping into a realm where the rules of physics, time, and existence are twisted beyond recognition, a place where reality itself becomes an enemy. The Bermuda Triangle has not only terrorized those who encounter it, but has influenced countless creators in the realms of film, literature, and popular culture. From TV shows like The X-Files to books such as Charles Berlitz's The Bermuda Triangle, the mystery has captivated imaginations around the world. These stories often explore themes of human vulnerability, the terror of unseen forces, and the idea that nature, or something beyond nature, is inherently dangerous and incomprehensible. The triangle serves as a reminder of the limitations of human knowledge, a symbol of nature's overwhelming power and the unknown depths of our own fears. It is not just a region. It is a concept that forces us to confront the horrifying possibility that we may never truly understand our world.